The story of Atlantis is a ghost story. It's a tale whispered through the ages. The Greek philosopher Plato first told us about it. He described a magnificent island nation. It was powerful, rich, and full of wonders. Its people were noble and brilliant. But one day, in a single night of fire and earthquakes, Atlantis vanished. It sank beneath the waves, taking all its secrets with it. This story has captured our imagination for thousands of years. We search for it in the deep ocean. We dream about its lost splendor. What if the story didn't end there? What if this was not an ending, but a beginning? Think about it. A civilization so advanced, so mighty. Could it really be defeated by simple rock and water? Maybe the legend got one part wrong. Maybe Atlantis did not fall. Maybe it rose. Perhaps the Atlanteans saw the disaster coming. They were, after all, described as children of the sea god Poseidon. Their connection to the ocean was deep. They understood its moods, its power, and its secrets. It's possible they used their incredible minds not to fight nature, but to work with it, to survive. Imagine a different ending to this ancient tale. Let's embark on a journey of what if. A journey guided by curiosity. Science is all about asking what if. What if the Atlanteans had technology far beyond their time? Not just bronze swords and sailing ships, but something more. Something that could master the very forces that threatened them. What if their city wasn't just made of stone, but of materials we are just now beginning to understand? This single change, this one new idea, transforms a tragedy into a tale of incredible triumph. It turns a lost civilization into a hidden one, thriving in the depths. This is not a story of magic, but of possibility. It is a thought experiment. It takes the legend of Atlantis and views it through the lens of science and engineering. We will explore how a civilization could survive its own apocalypse. We will imagine the world they would have built. A world powered by the ocean itself. A world connected by silent flying machines. A world that could have changed the course of human history forever. Join me as we dive deep. Not into the ruins of Atlantis, but into the heart of a living, breathing, futuristic city. How could a whole island survive a cataclysm? The answer lies not in myth, but in technology. The Atlanteans, in our story, were not just wise rulers. They were master engineers and scientists. They saw the end coming. Their geologists detected the tremors deep within the earth. Their astronomers saw slight shifts in the planet's wobble. They knew their home was doomed, but they did not despair. They saw a challenge, an engineering problem on a colossal scale. Their solution was as bold as it was brilliant. They would not abandon their city. They would save it. Their first step was to create a protective barrier. Imagine a massive, transparent dome. Not made of glass, but of a crystalline material grown in their labs. A material stronger than steel, yet flexible. As the earth shook and the volcanoes roared, this dome would rise from the ocean floor. It would encircle their capital city. It would hold back the crushing weight of the sea. This dome was their ark. It allowed them to seal their world off from the chaos outside. While the waves crashed above, the Atlanteans were safe inside their bubble of air and light. With the city shielded, they needed to control their environment. An enclosed city needs air, water, and light. The Atlanteans developed advanced life support systems. Great machines, like mechanical lungs, would scrub the air. They would extract oxygen directly from the seawater outside the dome. Other systems would desalinate the ocean water, providing an endless supply of fresh water for drinking and farming. Light would come from the city itself. Buildings, streets, and even the dome would glow with a soft bioluminescent light, mimicking the sun they could no longer see. They had created a self-sustaining world. The final piece of their survival puzzle was stability. The ground beneath them was still unstable, so they cut their city free. Using powerful gravitational engines, they lifted the central part of their island from the seabed. The city became a colossal submarine. It could now float in the ocean's currents. It could move to safer, more stable parts of the undersea world. The sinking of Atlantis wasn't a destruction. It was a strategic relocation, a descent into a new frontier. They had turned the ocean from a tomb into a sanctuary, their new home. Life inside the domed city of Atlantis would be unlike anything on the surface world. Their cities would not be sprawling collections of stone and wood. They would be vertical gardens, reaching up toward the glowing apex of the dome. Buildings would be grown, not built. Using bioarchitecture, the Atlanteans would cultivate structures from living coral-like materials. These buildings could repair themselves. They could change shape to meet new needs. The city would feel organic, alive. Spiraling towers covered in glowing moss and aquatic plants would create a landscape that was both a metropolis and a forest. Transportation would be silent and seamless. There would be no noisy carts or crowded streets. Instead, people would travel in personal transport pods. These sleek, teardrop-shaped vehicles would glide along magnetic pathways. The pathways would weave through the buildings and along the city's curved walls. For longer distances, they would use public aqua trains. These were long, transparent tubes that moved through the water-filled channels between different city sectors. Travel would be fast, efficient, and offer breathtaking views of the undersea world just outside the city's protective dome. It would be like living inside a perfectly designed aquarium. Daily life would be transformed by helpful machines. Small, floating robotic drones, like metallic jellyfish, would handle chores. They would clean the streets, deliver goods, and assist with repairs. Information would be instantly accessible. Instead of books or scrolls, Atlanteans would use crystal interfaces. A simple touch on a handheld crystal tablet or a public wall panel could bring up vast libraries of knowledge, art, and communication. Education would be immersive. A student learning about marine biology could project a life-sized hologram of a whale right in their classroom. Technology was not just a tool, it was a partner in their daily existence. The design of the city was a celebration of their new home. Parks would not be fields of grass, but stunning aquatic gardens. They would feature rare, deep-sea plants that glowed with their own light. Giant windows in the dome's base would look out into the deep ocean. Citizens could watch giant squid and schools of shimmering fish swim by. The city's structure was meant to remind them of their connection to the sea. They did not conquer the ocean. They lived in harmony with it. Atlantis was a testament to the idea that technology and nature could exist together, beautifully. A futuristic city needs a tremendous amount of power. The dome, the life support, the transportation, all of it requires energy. The Atlanteans would not burn wood or coal. That would poison their enclosed air. Instead, they would draw power from the most reliable source they had: the ocean itself. They would become masters of clean energy. Their primary power source would be geothermal vents. These are cracks in the ocean floor where heat from the Earth's core escapes. The Atlanteans would build power stations directly over these vents, using the intense heat to generate steam and turn massive turbines. They would also harness the power of the tides. The moon's gravity pulls on the Earth's oceans, creating a predictable rise and fall of water. The Atlanteans would build huge underwater turbines, like giant windmills. The slow, powerful movement of the tides would spin these turbines day and night. This would generate a steady, endless supply of electricity. This energy was completely clean. It produced no waste. It had no pollution. It was the rhythm of the planet, converted into light and life for their city. Their world would pulse with the energy of the ocean. Energy storage was another key innovation. Sometimes they would generate more power than they needed. This excess energy couldn't be wasted. So, they developed massive crystal batteries. These were not like our chemical batteries. They were giant, perfectly formed crystals grown in special labs. They could absorb and store immense amounts of energy. When the city needed more power, these crystals would release it as a gentle hum of light and force. These massive energy reserves meant that Atlantis would never face a blackout. Their power was as reliable as the ocean currents. This mastery of energy would define their society. Energy would be abundant and nearly free for everyone. This would eliminate many of the conflicts that plagued the surface world. There would be no wars over resources like oil or gas. Every citizen would have access to the power they needed to live comfortably. This energy wealth would allow them to focus on higher pursuits: science, art, and exploration. Their clean energy technology was not just an engineering marvel. It was the foundation of their peaceful and prosperous civilization. It was the engine that drove their utopia. Even in their hidden undersea world, the Atlanteans would not forget the sky. They were curious people, always wondering, about what was happening on the surface they had left behind. So, They built vessels that could travel not just in water, but also in the air. These were not airplanes with wings, no. They were vimanas, or skyships, that defied gravity. Using the same gravitational control technology that kept their city afloat, these ships could rise silently from the ocean. They could hover in the air, move without a sound, and travel at incredible speeds. These ships would be made of a polished metallic substance that could actually change its color. It could look like a cloud, or shimmer like a reflection on the water, making them nearly invisible. When an Atlantean skyship left the ocean, it would surface in a remote, hidden cove. It would then rise into the sky, camouflaged from any primitive eyes that might be watching from below. The ships were powered by the same crystal energy source as the city. They could travel for years without needing to refuel. They were the perfect tools for exploration and observation. The Atlanteans would use these ships to watch the other civilizations of the world develop. They would be silent observers. They might fly over the construction of the pyramids in Egypt, or witness the rise of the first cities in Mesopotamia. They would see humanity taking its first slow steps toward civilization. From their high vantage point, they would look like gods. But they would follow a strict rule: do not interfere. They understood that helping too much could be harmful, and they believed other cultures needed to find their own path. Sometimes, a ship might be seen by accident. A lone shepherd on a hillside at night might see a silent glowing light streak across the sky, or a sailor on a calm sea might see a strange shape rise from the water and vanish into the clouds. These sightings would become legends. Stories of fiery chariots, flying shields, or visitors from the heavens. The Atlanteans would not know it, but their secret explorations would fuel the myths and legends of the ancient world. They were ghosts in the machine of history, unseen but not entirely unfelt. The Atlanteans' rule of non-interference would not last forever. Curiosity and compassion would eventually lead them to make contact. They would not arrive with armies or, grand pronouncements. Their approach would be subtle. Maybe they'd choose a small, isolated group of people. Perhaps a brilliant thinker, an open-minded priestess, or a curious artisan. An Atlantean emissary, disguised as a traveler from a distant land, would approach them. They would not offer weapons or gold. Instead, they would offer knowledge, a new way to plant crops, a better way to make pottery, a simple star chart. Imagine, for a moment, an Atlantean visitor meeting an early Greek astronomer. The Atlantean, without revealing their origin, could share a more accurate map of the stars. They could explain the concept of a round Earth. They could introduce the idea that the Earth orbits the Sun, not the other way around. This knowledge would be a seed. It would not be a command, but a suggestion. The Greek astronomer would study this new idea and test it against their own observations. The idea would then spread, not as a divine revelation, but as a scientific discovery. Trade would be different too. Atlantis had no need for gold, silver, or spices. What they valued was novelty. They were interested in new forms of life, new ideas, and new art. An Atlantean trader might exchange a self-purifying water jug for a beautifully woven tapestry. They might offer a handful of seeds for a plant that could produce a new color of dye in exchange for a collection of folk songs and stories. This was not a trade of wealth, but a trade of culture. The Atlanteans were cosmic collectors of information and creativity. This limited contact would have a ripple effect on the ancient world. Some civilizations might advance more quickly. The Mayans might develop a more precise calendar with a little help. The engineers of the Roman Empire might learn the formula for a stronger type of concrete. But this help would be carefully managed. The Atlanteans would be like gardeners. They would plant seeds of knowledge and watch them grow. They would try to avoid creating dependency. Their goal was to elevate all of humanity, not to rule it. They were the world's secret teachers. The influence of Atlantis would cause a scientific renaissance across the ancient world. With small pushes of knowledge from their secret visitors, human progress would accelerate. In Egypt, architects who learned about Atlantean material science might build taller obelisks and more complex temples. In India, mathematicians who were introduced to new concepts might develop algebra and calculus centuries earlier. The seeds of knowledge planted by Atlantis would blossom everywhere, speeding up the pace of discovery and innovation. The Dark Ages might never happen. Atlantean culture would also leak into the world, shaping art and philosophy. Stories of a utopian city under the sea would become more than just a myth. They would become an inspiration. Philosophers would debate the Atlantean ideas of governance without poverty and justice without conflict. Artists would try to capture the beauty of their bioarchitecture in sculptures and paintings. The Atlantean ideal of living in harmony with nature would inspire new spiritual movements that saw divinity in the earth and ocean, not just in the sky. Science and medicine would take a giant leap forward. Imagine, for example, an Atlantean sharing the basics of germ theory with a healer in ancient Greece. Suddenly, they would understand the importance of clean water and sanitation. Plagues that devastated ancient populations could be stopped. Knowledge of astronomy, passed on subtly, would allow for better navigation. This would encourage exploration and connect the world's cultures much earlier. The Atlantean influence would not be a tidal wave, but a rising tide that lifted all boats. This interaction would change Atlantis as well. By observing and interacting with other cultures, the Atlanteans would learn about themselves. They would be fascinated by the raw creativity, passion, and resilience of the surface dwellers. They might see their own technology-driven society as lacking a certain spark, a certain chaotic beauty. The art, music, and stories they collected would enrich their own culture. It would be a two-way exchange. While Atlantis taught the world about science, the world would teach Atlantis about what it means to be human. If Atlantis had survived and shared its knowledge, our modern world on this day, November 30th, 2025, would be unrecognizable. We would be living in a future that we can only dream of. Our cities would be clean, green, and beautiful. They might be built with self-healing, organic materials inspired by Atlantean bioarchitecture. Pollution would be a forgotten problem. Our power would come from the clean, limitless energy of the tides, the sun, and the Earth's core. The air would be fresh, and the rivers would run clear. Our world would be healthier. Transportation would be revolutionized. We might travel between continents in silent, supersonic skyships that use gravitational technology. There would be no need for polluting airplanes or crowded airports. Our cars, if we still use them, would float silently on magnetic roads, all powered by clean energy. The world would feel smaller and more connected. A trip from New York to Tokyo might take less than an hour. The great oceans would not be barriers, but highways, with high-speed, underwater trains connecting the continents. Our understanding of the universe would be far more advanced. With a head start of thousands of years from Atlantean astronomy, we would likely be an interplanetary species by now. We would have colonies on the Moon and Mars, not as desperate escapes, but as extensions of our curiosity. We would be exploring the outer planets, and maybe even sending probes to the nearest stars. Our cosmic perspective would be vastly different. We would see Earth not as our only home, but as our cradle. A precious starting point for a much grander journey. Most importantly, our global society might be more peaceful and united. The Atlantean philosophy of sharing resources and knowledge could have prevented centuries of war and conflict. With energy and food being abundant, the reasons for fighting would diminish. The early connection between cultures would have fostered a greater sense of shared humanity. We might look at each other not as citizens of different nations, but as fellow Earthlings. The legacy of Atlantis would not just be in our technology, but in our wisdom and our unity as a species. In the end, the story of a futuristic Atlantis is more than just a fun thought experiment. It holds up a mirror to our own world. It makes us think about the path we are on. When we imagine Atlanteans using clean energy, we ask ourselves why we are still so dependent on fossil fuels. When we dream of their beautiful green cities, we look at our own concrete jungles and wonder if we can do better. The legend of Atlantis, whether real or not, serves as a powerful source of inspiration. It is a vision of what humanity could become. This story challenges our view of history. We often see the past as a simple, primitive time. But the what-if of Atlantis suggests that incredible things might have been possible. It reminds us that there may be lost knowledge, forgotten technologies, and hidden chapters in the human story. It encourages a sense of wonder and humility. It tells us that we don't have all the answers. The universe is full of mysteries, and some of them might be right here on our own planet, buried in myth or hidden in the deep sea. The dream of Atlantis is ultimately a dream about our own potential. The Atlanteans in our story solved problems that we are still struggling with today. They overcame environmental disaster. They created a sustainable society. They explored the world with curiosity instead of conquering it with force. They represent the best parts of ourselves: the scientist, the artist, the explorer, and the philosopher. They show us that our greatest challenges can be met with intelligence, cooperation, and a bold imagination. So, the next time you look out at the vast, mysterious ocean, think of Atlantis, not as a city of gold that was lost, but as an idea that can still be found. An idea of a better future. A future where we use our technology wisely. A future where we live in harmony with our planet. A future where we reach for the stars together. The journey to that future doesn't require us to find a lost city. It only requires us to build one, inspired by the grandest of our dreams. The cosmos is waiting.